Librarians, thanks for joining us today for our annual spring event. I know it's not just one day, it is all week, which is always very exciting. So you can use that discount anytime you want to come into the store. We really appreciate your patronage here. But you are also allowed to shop online. If you have not gotten, please contact one of us here for the promo code. And you can use that online if you're not comfortable coming in the store or unable to come in the store because you're from out of town. So we really appreciate that. Hey, I'm Chris Jager, and I am the fiction book buyer here at Baker. And I do have some reviews for you for today. These books that I'm going to review have come out since last October's event in the fall. So anything here that you may already have copies of or have not heard of, it's since our October event. So it's just the last 6 months. If you have any questions about the books I have reviewed today or anything else that might be on our shelves, you can contact me. You can call the bookstore 616-957-3110. You can contact me via email, chris.jager, which is Jager, and Chris is with a CH. I had people ask, at bakerbookhouse.com. And so those are probably the best two ways. Otherwise, just come in and ask too. I would love to see you. So we're going to get started. I've just got a few books here that there's really no rhyme or reason to them. They're just ones that I think I would like to highlight, and for various reasons, either new authors or an author that has come up with something different. So I'm very excited about all of them. There are a lot of really good ones. You do have a packet that you can download. If you haven't done that already, you can get it on our website. Otherwise, we can send you a link for it, and I'll give you this list amongst other lists that you guys all like to get. So the first book I'm going to do is Till I Want No More by Robin Pearson. This is a sequel to her first one, and it doesn't necessarily continue that story, but you will meet those characters in here. So I do recommend book one first, and so this one it's still contemporary. It's considered women's fiction or Southern fiction, but I love it because you feel like you're part of the family. You get to know them, and even though there is that secret that kind of weaves its way through this family story, they love each other and they take care of each other and they forgive each other for whatever has happened. So there's a lot of that good family stuff in there, which I really, really appreciate, because so often you have a family that has a secret and they're at each other's throat about it the whole time. This one is different than that, and that's what I really like. I love Robin's writing. Her characters are wonderful, and like I said before, you feel like you're part of the family or part of the story when you read them. She's very good at writing that kind of story. I feel like I'm repeating story all the time, but anyways, so hunt them both down. But this is the new one that just came out a couple months ago. So Moonlight School by Susan Woods Fisher. I have been on a kick of reading books, and I love them, about women in history, whether it's a fictional story like this one, or I've read some biographies and actually watched some docudramas about it, but women that did things in history, even though they were told women shouldn't do that. They're like, well, I see a need, I'm going to do it, and I don't care what anybody says. So this one is based on Cora, and she was told, well, those hill people in the Ozarks, they don't learn, they don't like to learn. In fact, they're, And she says, well, I see a need, and I'm going to go do it. So she did. And then she was told, well, you shouldn't run for the school board. And she said, well, I see a need. And so she ran not only for the school board, she became school board president and for the county and continued to do that. And then the Moonlight Schools, which was actually a school for illiterate adults. And they had them at night because the adults have to work on the farms and such all day. And she was told nobody would come. And so she set them up anyways and said, well, let's find out how many. And she was hoping for like 10 people in all the schools and across the county. And they were packed out. And they continue to be packed out until these adults learn to read. And to me, those are the stories that we don't always hear about in schools, but we're finding more and more of these stories where it's not just women, men are doing it too, I don't want to leave them out, but these stories that we don't know the stories behind. And those are the ones that are, to me, just a fun read. I mean, and then I can go and do the research and I can go look up the facts and figure it out. And so thank you, Susan, for writing a book like that. And thank you, Cora, for doing the work you did. So Network of Deceit by Tom Threadgill. Straight up mystery, good guy book. Sequel to Collision of Lies. And I do recommend Collision of Lies first. They do follow each other within a few days. I should say a few weeks. I think it's more like a few weeks. But anyway, so you get to go back to Ava. She has been promoted to detective. Sorry, I just gave something away, but and so this is her first murder mystery after being promoted. So, and it actually is an interesting murder mystery because this young man is murdered, actually found dead in a water park, and they want to figure out why and how that happened and what happened to him and such. So goes into a little bit of hacking and computer science or computer crimes and such like that, which is just a interesting read. Some of what they were talking about, I have no idea what it meant. But it made for a good read because Tom did his research for it. And that to me makes a difference between a good book and a not good book. You can always tell when authors do their research. So I really recommend Tom's books. Like I said, they're great guidebooks, but anybody that likes just a straight up mystery that has a lot of good clues in it so you can try to figure it out yourself, that makes it more fun anyways. So check out Tom's books. And then Jennifer, and I apologize, Jennifer, I'll probably slaughter your last name, and I got Deibel, and I don't know if that's anywhere near right. That is probably the good Dutch pronunciation on that. Sorry about that. The Dance in Donegal. This is one of those books I've always wanted to go to Ireland. One of those trips you want to take. We can blame COVID, but right now it probably wasn't COVID the reason I didn't go to Ireland yet. But we'll get there. But this book made me feel like I was there. I mean, she has a wonderful way of doing descriptions where you can almost feel like you smell the smoke from the peat that they're burning, and you know what the house they went into looked like, and you know what the schoolroom looked like, and what they were dressed like in the countryside. And authors that can do that, she probably took a trip and knew what Ireland was like, which yes, I know she did. And but B, they work at making sure you know what's that like. And so you have a great story. You have Maura that heads back to the village her mother is from to take a teaching job, and she doesn't know quite why her mother wanted her to go back home, even though her mom never traveled back home herself. So there's a little bit of intrigue to it. I don't want to say it's a mystery, but it's not. There's a reason for it, and so you have to find that out. So really well done. That is her debut novel. So I'm looking forward to what else we're going to see from Jennifer. Trial and Error by Robert Whitlow. This one, he is a lawyer, and so he writes lawyer books. And I usually call them lawyer mysteries, but they don't all have a big mystery to it. A lot of times they're just a lawyer book where there's a case they're involved in or something is going on that they're trying to solve. Hence the word mystery comes up. But this one, actually, our main lawyer, our main character is Buddy. And when he was in high school, his girlfriend was pregnant, and she disappears a week after the baby is born. And he has not seen her or their baby since then. And so flash forward a few years, and he has made it his life goal as a lawyer to help families find missing family members, usually parents looking for children that have either been kidnapped or run away. So that's all in here also, where he's helping a family, but his look for his daughter is also part of the story. So if you have read Robert Whitlow, you're going to like Robert Whitlow. If you really liked his old school stuff, this has really reminded me of it. He just wrote the two, The Chosen People and Chosen Land, I believe is the second one. And they're about the action adventure book, and those were good. I thoroughly enjoyed them, but this is back to that lawyer story, and I really like that too. So a little bit different. I mean, his writing style is the same in both books, but there's just a little bit different. So this is a little less fast paced than the other ones. So Robert, again, another good guy author if you're looking for guy books. The Nature of Fragile Things, which has something stuck to the front of it, and I will remove that. So Nature of Fragile Things by Suzanne Meissner. This is actually a story centered around the earthquake in San Francisco in 1906, right? I think that's when the earthquake was. If I have the date wrong, that's my fault. I love Susan's books. I've been reading them for years. Yep, she started writing when she was 6. I started reading them when I was 7, so it worked out perfectly because we're very young. But anyway, so I love her books. If you saw when she was on our virtual events, we talked about a couple different things, and the different books she wrote was what came up. But the research she did for this is just amazing. You can see some of it on her website and the different things she did. You know, she shares the maps and the pictures of the before and that after pictures and such of the earthquake in San Francisco. So just amazing stories behind that. But this one, you meet our main character, and I forgot her name all of a sudden, Sophie, and she actually answers an advertisement in the paper, a man that needs a husband or needs a wife and a mother for his daughter. And so she doesn't know the guy and hops in the train and rides across the country and becomes his wife, all on the same day she arrives in San Francisco. And so there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. I don't want to mention too much because I don't want to give any spoilers away, because there are some interesting threads to the story and why things are the way they are. And so I really, really liked it. Susan did a good job of making sure you kind of followed her along rabbit trails that probably led you in the wrong direction, so you didn't always know what was going to come. So that is good writing and just a fun read. I happened to take it on vacation, so I was able to read it a little quicker than normal. So I read it in one day, but it's a good read and you're going to enjoy it. And yes, I know I can already hear you librarians asking, it is only out in hardcover yet. About 9 months, Susan said her books come out, so in softcover. So look for it next Librarians Day. Allison Pittman. I love Allison's books. She writes honest books. I don't know how else to put it, because the way she writes isn't blunt. It's just honest. This is the way it is. And I love that. And so this one really intrigued me. It's part of the Doors of the Past series that Barbara is doing. And they're taking these little, I don't know what they call them, something, a myth or a haunting or something that is centered around a city. And this one is in San Antonio, which is her home state, or city. State is Texas, obviously. And so it's a dual time. You have one in 1915, and there you have Hedda. And she, her husband passed away, and his kids from his previous marriage are trying to get her to give up what he gave her in his will. And so she goes into hiding, but she also needs to find a new husband to, you know, be supported. And then there's a contemporary time one, and there's the main person in that one is Dina, and she is very fascinated by Hedda's book, or story, excuse me. And so there's a little bit of a ghost story to it, but it's fascinating. Okay, so don't go in the supernatural element there. It's just a ghost story, kind of like what you tell around campfires. You know, there's a little bit of scare to it. There was a couple parts of it, I will tell you, that I did not read it at night. So, because there is a little creepy part to it, but it makes for a really good read. So I really enjoyed it. It's just a straight up good book. I mean, sometimes that's all it is. They're not teaching you anything. They're not telling you anything. They just want to tell you a good story. And Allison is a master at that. So, another debut novelist, Ashley Clark here, The Dress Shop on King Street. This is also a dual time. It is set in the 40s and then contemporary time. And what it is you meet the young lady, Millie, and she is a mixed race. And her mom was African American, and then her father was Italian. And so she actually keeps that a secret because she can, and this is part of the story. I'm not trying to raise anybody's hackles here, but she passes. And so her mom says, you know, to save her from the racism that's going in her hometown, she sends her out of town to go live. And so this is her story, but it's also a contemporary story of somebody in her future. One of her ancestors is coming. And so it is, you do read, some of it is set in Charleston, South Carolina, which is also a beautiful place to go. But like I said, it does deal with racism. It does deal with family and the positives and negatives of families and your history and your ancestors. So I just thought that was really neat, but also to deal with the racism issue. I mean, it's so relevant right now as to what's going on in the world, and to be able to read it from somebody's perspective that probably walked both sides of that fence. So, you know, it's just a different perspective on it. So I really enjoyed that part of it. So there's another one I'll talk about in a little while that's coming out too in the next couple weeks that I think you guys will like. And then, of course, you know, we can't do a Librarian's Day without a Julie Klassen book. Good heavens. So Castaway in Cornwall, this is actually about these people that would scavenge the boats that would crash on their shores because they were dangerous shores off in North Cornwall. Sorry, for some reason that seems to be hard for me to say today. But anyway, so and it is about that and their experiences of the people they find sometimes and such. So really interesting story, a little different for Julie. There's a little bit of a mystery to it, and I like that part of it. Still in that Regency romance that is just her wheelhouse and just a good read. She's one of these authors. I have told many of you I'm not a big fan of Regency romance. Just it doesn't mean they're not good books. They're fantastic books, just not my thing, except for Julie's. I love Julie's. Go figure. But she's also a very good writer. So I have a lot of people that don't normally read what would be considered hers, but like historical, and love Julie's books. So just know that she's got a wide appeal to a bunch of different readers. So Nightbird Calling. Most of you guys know Cathy Gohlke's books because of her World War II books, and fantastic. This is set during that era, but it's in the U.S., and it is in No Creek, and I think it is North Carolina. Yep, there it is. I see it now. So it's a little bit different, different on many different levels. There is the illiteracy, there is racism, there's a generational abuse, which is abuse by a parent to a child, but also by a spouse, and so the parent to the fellow spouse, but also to the child, and then the child's spouse. And so there's all this different abuse in here and how that all intertwines together. We have our main character who goes back, Liliana goes back to where her mother is from, to an aunt she only has happy memories with. She is trying to escape her abusive relationship. And so her aunt offers her a safe place to be. And so I don't want to go into a lot of detail because you need to know the story as it develops in front of you and things happen. And as you watch Liliana learn to be herself and understand and know that she can stand on her own 2 feet while she's being mentored by a very strong single aunt. So really good book. I recommend anything by Cathy. Just go out, buy it, read it. Doesn't matter. They're all that good. She does a great job with her character development and her storylines. You get involved right away. There were a couple times I wanted to throw the book because I was really mad at what one of the characters was doing, but that's a good reaction. You should be able to be emotionally attached to your characters. Amy Lynn Green. I know Amy. Actually, she works with one of the publishing houses, and so she wrote a very interesting World War II book. This is actually something, I guess I never really thought about it, so I didn't know it, but this is set in Minnesota, but in a prisoner of war during World War II. So the German prisoners were taken over here and put in camps here. And this one truly did exist in Minnesota. So and after reading about things and doing a little research, I found out they had them in Michigan too. Things I didn't know. So, and see, now when anybody tells you, yes, you can learn a lot of things from fiction books. So anyway, so this one is set in Ironside Lake, Minnesota, and our main character here was Joanna, and she is recruited, and you'll figure out why when you read the book, what I mean by recruited, to help read the German letters either going home or coming back, to censor them from the prisoners because she is fluent in German. And actually the book is written in letter form. I don't know if you can see that. And at first I wasn't sure I would like it, and it works so well with this story. It really does. And it's not only Joanna corresponding with people, but you get to see some of the prisoners' stories, or excuse me, letters, and some of the letters that come from their homes, and corresponding that way. So it makes for a lovely story that way. It does work. I know I would have told you I wasn't a believer. But yes, I really did enjoy that one. So Amy's got another one coming out soon. I don't remember the exact date of it. But again, I believe it's also a World War II one. So I'm looking forward to that one. The Promised Land. This book I've read Elizabeth before, always liked her books. This one, I kept reading it because then I could keep yelling at the main character because I didn't like her at all. Not even a little. She drove me bananas. And I will tell you right now, it's not because our personalities were alike. She would, if I knew this person, she would have drove me bananas. So that was good. And I like that because it made me want to keep reading because I wanted to see her fail. Isn't that just really weird? But anyways, us readers, we're a weird group. But anyways, so this is actually a good story about Abby, and she is a control freak, and her family rebels, and I'm not going to tell you how, but she ends up going on a pilgrimage in France, and there is this walk does actually exist, and you can do it through France, and I think it ends up in Spain, depending on how much you want to walk, and it might even start in Belgium, but you can do the research. It's pretty cool. And it's about her reasoning for going and what does happen. So I really, really like Elizabeth's books, and I will tell you, if you've read her book, The Swan House, you should read The Promised Land. They're not really follow real close together, but you get to find some of the characters that you fell in love with in The Swan House show up in this one, which is really kind of cool. So, you know, that always makes for good reading when you get to visit old friends like that. You're going to need Kleenex. Plain and simple. Facing the Dawn by Cynthia Ruchti. I can still not say that right, Cynthia. I'm really sorry. I keep practicing, and I think I get worse. But anyways, this one, and I'm not going to go into grave detail in it because it gives away something very quickly, but you need to find it out yourself. But this book deals with a lot of different issues: grief, single parenthood, learning, you know, to be the parent and the friend at the same time, which is kind of a strange thing to do. But there's our main character. Her husband Liam is off digging wells in Uganda, so of course is a hero to everybody. But she here, Mara, is here trying to raise a family on her own, and that's where the issues come in. And how do you single parent when the hero is off in a different country, and you know the kids think he has hung the moon, and everything you say is wrong. So there's a lot that goes on there. I love Cynthia's books because she is very much an issue-driven author. Everything, you know, centers around different issues. If you've read some of her other books, she is, you know, she's dealt with grief, she's dealt with alcoholism, she's dealt with incarceration, she's dealt with hoarding, depression, mental illness. I mean, so these are issues that are very relevant to today. So, you know, if you're looking for that type of book, and she writes them well. She never writes down to the person who has the issue. She writes them as you and I, which we're all in those boats together. So, so this one's a good one. Like I said, you'll probably need some Kleenex. So, you know, just be forewarned. So, Kim Vogel Sawyer's newest one, From This Moment, is actually one of those books that is about the foster care system, but also about adoption. So our main character, Jace, has always dreamed of one day putting down roots, and that's because of his experience being in the foster care system. And so this is actually his story of that. There's more to it, but I just found that part of it interesting, part of it because it's Jace. I mean, it's a young man. Instead of a maybe female character, as so many write nowadays, which, you know, when you're a female, it's easier to write a male or female than male. But anyway, so I wanted to mention it for that reason, because we don't know what it's like unless you were a child in the foster care system. And this can enlighten you to that and help you understand it more and help you understand how these kids struggle with these sort of things throughout the system, but also into adulthood and what they were missing. And like, you know, he's looking to put down roots, but he doesn't understand how to do that. So that's why when Kim or any other author writes a book like that, it's just a brilliant way to find somebody else's story so that maybe you can minister somebody someday, or at least say, you know what, I understand a little bit. So so thank you, Kim, for writing something like that. But you know what, Kim is also one of those writers that I always just say, just find one of her books and read them. They're just that good. So my first one that I'm going to do here out of this last stack I got is on a piece of paper, because the book doesn't actually come out until next week, and because we had to tape this obviously beforehand. So it's called When the Stars Rain Down. It's by Angela Jackson Brown. It is on your list, so don't worry about that, but I wanted to show you the cover too. This is a book that deals with racism. It is set in the 40s. It is in Georgia, and there is a ton that goes on, but it's written from the perspective of a young woman and a young African American. But I wanted to mention also that some of the language is true to that time. So you have to know that when you go into reading this book. For me, it made the story true and it made it real and worth reading. It was one of those books that partway through it, I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. But it wouldn't leave me alone. It wouldn't be like, no, go ahead and put me aside and I'm fine. I kept thinking, I have to know what's going to happen. I have to know who survives this, so to speak. And well worth it. In fact, the last half of the book, I think I read it all in one evening, where I can't stop reading it. It was that good. So let me tell you, if you don't pick up a copy at Librarians Day, track it down and read it, because I think it's something we should all read, because this is part of our history, good, bad, or ugly. This is part of America's history, and we should know and learn from it, not ignore it. So, but yeah, really, really well done, and I'm looking forward to what else we're going to get from Angela book-wise. Piece of the Moon by Chris Fabry. He will be with Baker Book House on a virtual event on April 6th, which you guys just missed. But it will be available on Facebook under our videos, but also on our YouTube channel. So please listen in and find out about Chris's writing experience with this book. I'm looking forward to listening to him. I love his books. They are these good Southern fiction. I don't know if they are deemed Southern because they're usually in Virginia and West Virginia, but that's the feel to them. I always think of it, there's more to it, but that Walton feel. Not simplistic, but just that nice, good, down-home feeling. The people that you meet are good, salt-of-the-earth people, and they're characters you want to get to know because they're kind of quirky, too, which is fun. So in this one, Gideon Quigley is an eccentric millionaire, and he hides millions of dollars in the hills and then sets everybody on a treasure hunt. And so that's what this book is, just a treasure hunt. But there's so much more than that, and that's what the important part of the story is basically, you know, the story of where does your treasure lie, and so there's that back and forth. Some of the characters you meet you're going to love, some of them you're going to be not real happy with them, and then there's a young man in there. I'm not giving away a huge part of the story, but he has a stutter, and it talks about that and how people react to him because of his stutter. And that just is phenomenal to me. So I love that when they include different characters like that might even make me uncomfortable. That young man didn't, but sometimes they do. And some of his books have that. So like I said, come find the video, find out what Chris is always writing about, but also just read his books. All of them are good. I love this one. Junebug and Dogwood are some of his earlier ones that are two of my favorites, and there's several in between there. So I couldn't even remember all of the titles, but Chris is one of those authors that everybody should be reading. Good for guys too, if you're interested in that, if you want to mark that. So, and then A.K. Pittman, she wrote one that is based on Pride and Prejudice, only it's called Pudge and Prejudice. This one caused flashbacks because it's set in the 80s when I was in high school, and I didn't always like the memories it brought up, but that was okay too. So, but it is actually, and on a little side note, I went back and I listened to, I did not have time to read it, but I did listen to Pride and Prejudice, and it was fun to find the things that were the same. Now, some of you I know have read it many times and will have no problem finding the commonalities between the two books, but I enjoyed that part. So, but this is, we consider it teen fiction, to be honest with you. I think an adult would read this and get a good kick out of it, because like for me, growing up in the 80s and all the things we do, and they talk about like the cassette tapes, when your cassette tapes look like that and you had to take the pencil and figure it all out, kids nowadays just rewind and start over, and we had to struggle through so much. So anyway, so it is a good 80s book, but I would recommend it to teenagers, especially teen girls, because there's a lot about self-image and finding your own way in the world, even when you feel like your fellow sibling is probably the most popular kid in school and you're not, and things like that. So finding out how to stand on your own for yourself. So, and I did like that message in that book. So. And then a couple more, we have The Curator's Daughter by Melanie Dobson. This is a split time with World War II, set in 1940 and then 80 years later, so right around 2020. Very few of these books are marking these as 2020 because nobody wanted to write about 2020. So I believe it's been erased from the history books now too. Um, anyways, Melanie does World War II. She's like Cathy Gohlke. Go find a book and read it. You're gonna enjoy it. They are so good. So this one, it starts off, and it's an interesting. I found the back thing a little interesting because it's a young girl kidnapped on the eve of World War II, changes the lives of a German archaeologist, and forced into the Nazi Party. So it's a little bit different perspective on World War II. It's somebody that was working for the Germans and was part of the Nazi Party. So, so some of it is maybe a little bit uncomfortable because suddenly the Nazi, and do not think I support them, but somebody that was forced into the party becomes very human and what they struggled with. And I thought that was kind of an interesting perspective. So, but very well done. I like Melanie's books, like I said before, and then the dual time with how 80 years ago still was relevant to what happens now. I always enjoy that part of it. So, and then All That We Carried by Erin Bartels. This is actually set in the Porcupine Mountains in the UP. For those of you that live in Michigan, Porcupine Mountains, you're very familiar with them. I personally have never hiked them. I have seen them more than once. I had a grandparent that thought Michigan was the best state, and so we traveled all over Michigan on spring or in summer vacations. So, and Porcupine Mountains in that area was one of the ones we went to. So this is about two different sisters, Olivia and Melanie, and they became estranged shortly after their parents were killed in a car accident. And it's partly because each one of them grieved in a different direction, and so they just kind of grew apart. And one of the sisters started missing the other one, and so she said, let's go hike in the Porcupine Mountains together, and hopefully we'll get back together and get to know each other. And so it makes for an interesting story because it reminds me loosely balanced or based on the Mary and Martha in the Bible, where the two sisters obviously love each other dearly. In the Bible story, it sounds like they don't, but we know better, don't we, sisters? Anyways, and so they're very, very different, but they do love each other, and they, you know, what caused that estrangement and how do we get over that together? And so I don't necessarily recommend that if you're estranged with somebody to go hiking in the middle of the wilderness together. Personally, it wouldn't be my way to do it, but Erin makes it work, and because she is a person who does these hikes, she is very good at writing it, makes it very believable. And to be honest with you, and no, I'm not going to, but it makes you want to go and hike the Porcupine Mountains. Mostly it made me want to go back up in the UP, which I probably will do sometime soon. But very well done. It is her third novel. I know she's working on her fourth one. I don't have the exact date on when that's going to release, so, but soon, hopefully. So we this one in questions, I know people ask, it is contemporary and is considered women's fiction. So. And then our last book today, and for no rhyme or reason, like I said, I just grab them off the shelf when I'm like, oh, I got to make sure the librarians know about this one, is Shadows of the White City. This is the sequel to Veiled in Smoke, #2 of the Windy City saga. Flash forward from the end of Veiled in Smoke to about, I think it's about 20 years, and we continue the story of the two sisters. This one focuses a little more on Sylvia, who you did meet in the first one, and the young lady, child at the time, but as the story progresses, she ages, but the young child that she adopted. And as that child gets older, she asks more and more about questions about her family, and because she was old enough to remember her mom and dad, and so where were they from, and who are my relatives and stuff. So that all is in here. And again, we, you know, have that family dynamic that's a little bit different, because what is it like to have an adopted child that suddenly is asking questions about their their birth parents and such. So you have that dynamic, but you also have, the Chicago has rebuilt after the fire, which was, I mean, they went from being devastated to just a few short years later, they have this great World Fair that happened. Hence the White City, because the buildings in the world are in the World's Fair were mostly white. So that's where, I always wondered about that, by the way. So thank you, Jocelyn, for telling me that, why Chicago is called the White City sometimes. So it's such a good book. I enjoyed it. Book number 3 is due out next year, so we have to continue our story and find out what happens to Sylvia and her sister. And that is the end of my book reviews for today. There are many, many more new books out on the shelf, so come on in and purchase what you need. If you have any questions about this list or any of the other books in the store, you can contact me on, like I said, the phone number or my email address, and we hope to see you soon.